Sheriff Judy.
No! This is Patrick! Released 11 years after Scream 4, Scream 2022 slashed its way onto our screens, bringing with it a new wave of meta, fans, and style. The new generation of horror has arrived, and Scream 2022 took a stab at it by centering on a new set of teams led by Samantha Carpenter, no longer focusing solely on Sidney Prescott. Does this film hold up, or does it flounder in its attempt to revitalize a multi-decade spanning franchise? Let's get into it. Welcome back, I'm Sippin Ice, and Scream 5, as I'll be calling it from now on, is a requel of sorts, tying the old to the new. Before we get into it, spoiler warning for the entirety of the film. And be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to let me know if you enjoyed the video. With that said, let's see if Scream 5 can stand up with the wide selection of good sequels in this franchise. The movie opens up on a girl receiving a call on her landline. Samantha Carpenter, sister of Sam, is texting her friend Amber complaining about the outdated technology. Eventually, she answers it with a man calling themselves Charlie, a friend of her mother's from group. During the movie, we hear a lot about their mom, Christina, but she doesn't show her face like at all. Anyways, Tara lets them know that her favorite scary movie is The Babadook. Great movie, by the way, but the best is Wild. She calls it elevated horror, but Charlie, aka the killer, isn't quite a fan.
That sounds kind of boring to me.
So they begin terrorizing her, forcing her to take part in their game. As per usual, the game ends in a trick question. When asked who was the killer and stabbed, she correctly guesses Billy Loomis. But the way the question was worded had her not also saying Stu Macher. Bro did her dirty with the wording. Sarah runs to the door only to find Ghostface. She gets slashed but is able to shut the door after Falcon punching him. She uses her security system on her phone to lock the door, but someone keeps unlocking it, leading me to guess one of the suspects. Ghostface comes around the corner, stabbing her and throwing her down, only to break her leg. They bring the knife down, but get stopped by Tara's hand as the knife goes through it. As the cops pull up, Ghostface slashes us into the title card. Spoilers, she survived this encounter, and this opening scene is pretty great for me. I love the twist on the usual opening kill. Add on to that, the brutality was intense for the franchise. I also love Jenna Ortega's performance here, really well done. Later is when we meet Sam and her boyfriend Richie.
What'd you just take?
Your boner pills.
You are my boner pills.
They are taking a break from work as she receives a call from Wes informing her of the attack. So she heads back to Woodsboro, but not without her boyfriend Richie. Speaking of my boy Wes though, when we meet him is when we also meet the rest of the friend group. Amber Freeman, Tara's closest friend. Chad and Mindy Meeks, nephew and niece of the late and great Randy. Liz McKenzie, a nothing character with her entire role being reduced to actually being boring. Oh, she does date Chad though, so there's that. And lastly, Wes Hicks, son of Judy Hicks, the newly appointed sheriff of Woodsboro. Chad wants Liz to accept his location tracking offer, and trust me, I mention this because it does and will come back later. Before the scene ends, we meet a man with the most scenes in the film. My boy Vince. He's a weirdo stalker creep following his ex Liz wherever she goes.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting.
After he leaves, they head to the hospital to speak to a recently awakened Tara. Meanwhile, we catch up with Sam and Richie as they are arriving to Woodsboro, where big man Richie mentions he's never seen the Stab film. Oh, is that so? Not a fan of Stab, are we, huh? Right. They do finally arrive to the hospital, and when they do, everyone is kicked out in order to allow the sisters to talk. This scene is very emotional and the scene ended. It was heading in the right direction, but it was just cut quite short. The friend group, minus the sisters and Richie, are all at a bar, even though they're all in high school. They are talking about the events of the past as Vince pulls up, hitting on Liz. Chad Chad tries to out-macho him, and it's starting to look ugly as Vince, the dirty dishwasher Snyder, pulls out a knife. Before it could turn real ugly though, they get thrown out. Get out! We cut to nice guy Vince as he finishes up his potty break against the wall outside. Behind him, we see someone dash by. His car cranks on with the headlights on. The engine revs as the song Red Right Hand plays. Assuming it to be Chad, Vince approaches but sees no one. That's because Ghostface is behind him. He shanks bro one quick time in the throat and watches as Vince falls down. quickly bleeding out as he crawls away. This scene is pretty cool. I love the use of red right hand, but this scene, and a lot of the movie, suffers from the deleted scene syndrome. Vince originally had a scene in the bar with Dewey, and his death scene was drawn out more. Wasted potential in my eyes, but it was still good, just could have been better. Sam and Richie are at the hospital still, and while Richie decides to watch the stab movies on his phone, this leads Sam to go out and find something to eat. But what she really goes to do is to take her meds in peace, as she is seeing her dad as a vision. Her dad is Billy Loomis. It is nice seeing Skeet Ulrich back in the fold, but it is kind of an overplayed card by the end of the film. After she takes her meds, she gets a call from Ghostface and proceeds to get attacked in that break room. But when she makes it to Officer Vincent, clearly Ghostface was gone. Judy is asking Richie, Sam, and Amber questions in Tara's hospital room. You can clearly tell Judy and Sam aren't the fondest of each other. Because of everything going on, Sam decides to own up to her past and tell Tara why their dad left and why Ghostface is targeting them. Again, because Billy Loomis is her dad. Tara did not like hearing this and proceeds to kick Sam out of her room. Very emotional scene, by the way, from these two actresses. It's nice when the scene actually gets to play out and isn't cut off in the first 30 seconds. Hint, hint, dude, take the hint. Sam and Richie decide to consult an expert on the situation, which is when we pull up on my boy Dewey the Dewdrop Riley. As we clearly see, his life has fallen apart though. Bro is no longer the sheriff, he's no longer with Gel, and he downs the liquor bottle. Sad to see the fall from grace for my boy, but best believe he's still on top. Best believe that, dude. As they sit down in his living room, Dewey immediately accuses Richie and follows it up with the rules to survive a horror movie.
Who's he?
Let it out. Let it out.
The rules are as follows. 1. Never trust the love interest. 2. The killer's motive always ties to the past. 3. And most important, the first victim always has a friend group the killer is a part of. Thank you for filling in for the man Randy, Dewey. We appreciate you, my boy. As they leave, Dewey texts Gail about the situation and calls Sidney to inform her and to tell her to be safe. He tells her, something about this one just feels different. And while he is mostly wrong, there's one scene in particular that has him be more right than I ever wanted. Love seeing Sidney interact with our dude, but they needed more scenes for sure. Everyone, including the Dewdrop, show up to the Meeks household. It was very nice to see Martha Meeks again, and Sam tells everyone about her dad. And this is where we discuss who the killer is in the group. For example, Wes accuses Dewey.
Oh, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do about it. We don't want to do this today. Ooh, yeah.
Mindy realizes the killer is making a requel. She explains why the killer is doing it and explains the possible motive. They are writing their own version of Stab 8, but making it a requel, tying the new back into the old. Mindy tells Wes, since his mom is in the shitty sequel, he's safe, but that her and Chad aren't. Ironic. Judy is getting ready to leave in order to pick up some sushi when her son Wes comes home from a run. She leaves while he goes to take a shower. While Judy is driving, she gets a call from Ghostface, who then threatens her son, causing her to lose all logic and reason. She speeds home and tries to call Wes, but since he's in the shower, he doesn't notice her call. Ghostface proves he is in their house by pulling out a Psycho reference. When Judy finally arrives home, she rushes to the front door. But out pops Ghostface, stabbing her to the ground. In broad daylight, he finishes her off with a flurry of blows. Meanwhile, Wes has finished his shower and begins setting the table for dinner. During this extended scene, we get multiple instances of fake-outs, where we assume Ghostface to be, and he's not. It culminates in Wes going to the front door after realizing it's open. He shuts the door and turns to see Ghostface charging him. Ghostface is pushing the knife as Wes reaches for the taser. Unable to reach it and unable to fight back, Ghostface is able to slowly and painfully shove the knife into the side of his neck, ending him. This scene is one of the best of the film. The abrupt and sudden kill of Judy was intense and caught me off guard. Tied to the fact that it was in the daylight, just sealed it as a crazy scene. Wes, although, deserved more screen time, but he did have a cool and fun scene with a death scene that looked very painful. Like, yeah, it was the one stab, but it was like slow. Like, dude, come on. Sam, Dewey, and now Gail arrive to the crime scene. Gail and Dewey have a very heavy scene cluing us into their separation. They are just two different people at two different points in their lives. Very sad. Sam sees Tara's protective custody is at the scene, so she and Dewey race to the hospital. Also, dead meat cameo, let's go. Back at the hospital, Tara hears a crashing sound, leaving her to try and peace out, understandably. Before she can make it out of the room, the power cuts out and she gets a call from Sam. She wheels out seeing a dying cop. She checks, but their gun is gone. Down the way, a door opens so she hides in a room, and when they enter, she smacks them over the head with a landline phone. It's just Richie. But Ghostface is right behind him. He gets slashed and thrown to the ground. Tara slowly and painfully tries to will away while Ghostface answers Sam's call. They have her pick between the two, but Sam smartly was using this call to buy her some time for the elevator doors to open. But before we keep going, could you imagine if Sam actually just picked somebody? She was like, Tara, kill Richie. All right, yeah, just pick him off, dude. I don't care. Do him. Just go ahead, kill him. That would have been crazy, dude. Just seeing Ghostface like, okay. But anyway, Dewey shoots at them, causing them to run. As Dewey carries Richie towards the elevator, an absolute asshole smashes him into a trophy case thing. Luckily, Dewey fights them off and shoots them. But unluckily, he decides to go back for the head. He has his badass walk as he reloads his revolver, but he gets a call from Gale causing him to look down. Ghostface stabs him in the stomach. Then, with another knife in the back, Dewdrop is killed as they drive the knives deeper. The last thing he sees is a picture of when him and Gale were happy. Ghostface ends the scene saying, "It's an honor." You're damn right, you ass crack. That was my boy.
I'm sorry.
Gale reunites with Sidney after the passing of our beloved Dewey. While it was a cool scene and a decent death, I can't help but dislike it simply because of the sequel, Scream 6. More on that when I review that film. But, long story short, why have the high stakes and kill Dewey, but not have high stakes ever again?
Max, what do you want for dinner?
Justice.
Anyway, Sam grabs a high on painkillers Tara and plans to leave Woodsboro with Richie and her sister. Sidney tries to convince her not to leave, as you will be followed. She doesn't listen to her and dips out anyways. Sam, trust me when I say this. Sidney knows what she is talking about, dude. As they leave though, Sidney pulls a Gale Weathers by placing a tracker on their car. Tara's bag doesn't have her inhaler, so they decide to head to Amber's house to try and receive it. We jump to Amber as she is throwing a house party with the rest of the surviving friend group as a memorial for our boy Wes. It has two meanings, one for the character Wes, but another to pay homage to the legendary Wes Craven, who sadly passed back in 2015, as the teens shout, "For Wes." Also in this scene, I could be tripping, but I think Matthew Lillard is in this scene. Now, slow down, not saying physically, but more or less we hear his voice. Now, tell me I'm wrong, but doesn't his sound like our boy Stu saying, "Hey, pretty cool house," which makes sense when you know where Amber lives. She notices they are out of beer, so in homage to Tatum from the original, she heads to the basement to get more. A cool scene follows as Mindy and Amber have a back and forth about what if they were the killer. Liz and Chad are PDAing all over the couch, and she offers to go upstairs to tickle the pickle, but leaves angrily as Chad isn't sure if she is the killer or not. Can you blame him? I'm a fan of that, by the way, but literally immediately following that, he goes back on his word by accepting her invite to share locations. It has him actually go off into the woods next to the house looking for her. Like, brother, you wouldn't even go upstairs with her? With a house full of people, but you'd go over there thinking she was there. Come on now, dog. Come on, dude. Come on now, dude.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
Ghostface surprises him and stabs his leg. He runs, well, stumble considering the hole in his leg, and hides on the other side of a shed. He then throws his phone away as to not show his location. As he takes off, Ghostface bursts out from the shed.
Run, bitch! Run!
Stabbing him like 4 times, leaving him to die as Sam and the home team arrive. Richie goes dad mode and shuts the party down, leaving only the core group to remain. That being Sam, Tara, Mindy, Liv, and Richie himself. After this, a phenomenal scene happens between Richie and Mindy as he asks her to go to the basement in order to get some beer. It even hits us with the famous "I'll be right back" staple. Later, we catch up to Sidney and Gail as they are driving to the location. When they realize exactly where they are in Stu Macher's house, the same one her father tried to kill Sidney. Mindy is still watching Stab, and it's at the scene where her uncle Randy was about to be attacked. In a unique different twist, we see Mindy reenacting her uncle by saying, "Look behind you." But this time, she actually does. And it pays off, and she's able to hold off Ghostface's attack long enough for Sam to cause them to run off. Every remaining character comes running into the scene. Amber accuses one of them to be the killer. Liv, having found Chad, has his blood on her hands, leading to her to become the prime suspect. Until she's not, as Amber shoots her in the head, ending the most boring character in the most boring way.
Welcome to Act 3.
Richie and Sam run off to the basement, leaving Tara alone with the killer. But as Richie puts it, there's always two killers. Brother never watched a Stab movie until recently, yet he acts like he knows the whole franchise already. That should have been a pretty big hint. Outside, Sidney and Gail arrive to the sounds of screaming. Amber runs outside pretending to need help, but they ain't buying this amateur act. So Amber says piss on it and shoots Gail in the gut. Sidney heads inside to try and finish it. She walks around the house shooting into every closed door she can find, and I mean every one of them. Meanwhile, Sam, who abandoned Richie, finds Tara tied up in a closet. We cut away from her while she's having a momentary bit of distrust in her sister, catching back up to Sidney as she heads upstairs. She gets a call from Ghostface while she continues shooting the doors, one of which had Richie hiding, so his leg took a bullet. Ghostface busts out and battles Sidney for the gun. They fall over the railing and fall to the floor below. Richie tries to get to the gun first, but Sam beats him to it. And Richie really wanted that gun, so he stabs her and takes it. Richie is the second killer. Holy crap. The love interest is the killer? That's gotta be new and a fresh take. While Amber brings in Gail, we hear the motive. Toxic fandom. Richie wants to make his own movie, in his eyes, a better sequel than Stab 8. Sidney takes a stab to the gut as she reaches for the knife, so thus begins the staging phase. Amber notices Tara is gone, as Sam did untie her. Tara begins fighting Amber while Sam and Richie also have a brief scuffle. Tara loses, but the same can't be said for Sidney and Gail, who put a beating on Amber as she walks into the kitchen. Like getting smashed over the head with a glass of hand sanitizer, for example. She does get a momentary glimpse of winning the showdown, but they knock her into the stove, which comes on. She tries one last attempt at persuading them, but Gail is not having it. She shoots her a few times as she then falls onto the open flame, catching on fire, seemingly dealt with. Sam also has that fight with Richie, and while it's not near as cool as Amber's fight, the ending of it was wild. She finds a hidden knife, thanks to her ghost dad. She stabs Richie through the cheek and out the other. She gets on top as she stabs him repeatedly. He asks what about his ending, and she hits bro with the "here it comes" and slashes his throat, ending him. She takes no chances, so she lights his body up with bullets. The day is set way, here comes Amber, and she gets shot down from Tara the gunslinger. Now the day is saved. We see Mindy being wheeled out, surviving alongside her brother Chad. Before we wrap up, Sam thanks Sidney and Gail for their help. Luckily, Gail said she doesn't plan on writing a book about these events, and maybe instead about a brave and heroic former sheriff named Dwight Riley. The movie ends with the sisters heading to the hospital, as the camera pans out from the very house that started it all, the sun beginning to rise over the California hills. Scream 5 was and is a fun sequel that relies on bridging the gap between the older generations and the new. The movie is dedicated to Wes, which is amazing, as it was his vision, along with Kevin Williamson, that brought to life the franchise that we all so love to this day. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. The Scream franchise has no bad entries. Unlike others, Scream has consistently, at least, put out good, fun movies. I would have to rank Scream 5 a 7 out of 10. Some of the characters were a bit dull, and some just weren't really involved. This was mainly due to so many deleted scenes. Scenes that enhance the characters and their relationships with the overarching story. It's a fun ride with some fresh takes, but it does splinter with how much it does rely on the original specifically. Namely the killer being Richie, the love interest again. The motive was a different take, however, so I did enjoy that. Now what's your thoughts on Scream 5? Does it live up to the older generation of films? Let me know down below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you'll be notified when part 6 is released. And with that, stay chill, and I will see you next time.